Hoje temos uma aula diferente, pessoal, esqueçam os telemóveis por um minuto. Eu convidava antes de mais o nosso vice-reitor, o Dr. Paulo Nuno Vieira, a dar as boas-vindas. Welcome, gentlemen. He's the vice of the institution. So, what do you say, vice-reitor? Como é que se diz em inglês?
Vice-rector.
Vice-rector.
Yeah.
Rector,
Bom, so welcome, Boki. I'm very pleased to be here, and I hope you have a nice stay here in Lisbon and in Universidade Europeia. Bem-vindos a todos. Isto foi uma surpresa, esta introdução. Eu nem sei, quer dizer, conheço os convidados, mas não sei exatamente quem são os preletores e quem são os convidados da mesa redonda, mas bem-vindos a todos. E a reitora supostamente deveria estar aqui, mas com outros compromissos não pôde. Isto é fundamentalmente para vocês, são os teus alunos, calculo. São poucos, os outros não
são bons,
ok. Mas aproveitem e welcome again to this session.
Obrigado, Paulo. Vamos começar com o nosso primeiro introdutor, nosso especialista, Dr. Luís Ás, que tem aqui coisas importantes para partilhar connosco.
Como é que era mesmo?
Isso é um curso.
Não. Ok. Não, tem que se voltar. Não.
Não
quero vir.
Okay, yes.
Okay. So, just giving some brief notes about what I'm bringing today. First of all, thank you, Boki, for being here. It's a topic that is really interesting to athletes representation and athletes' rights. So when Professor Carlos Barroca said to me about the topic, I tried to bring some initial thoughts about the topic, and especially for our students to bring two ideas of projects that we are now teaching, having classes about entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. And the idea here is to bring two projects that have been involved in the last 5 years about the topic, not only athletes' right protection, but also social protection for athletes. I will talk about specifically the Olympic movement, not specifically about maybe some professional athletes that we have some differences here, but it brings again the topic to our first semester class about some topics that the American system or the American model of sports and the European model of sports are merging for some kind of future. So what we know about the athletes, especially top elite athletes, is that they are part of a system that brings profit for many organizations, that bring money for the industry. But usually, because of the origin of the European model of sports, it's more amateur, so bringing the amateurship for the system. And what we know is that especially in some kinds of Olympic sports, not so professional, we have athletes that live for like 10, 20, 30 years of their lives working, training every day, having relation with organization, but they are not seen as workers and they are not protected for this system or for this organization. So what I'm bringing here is just 4 or 6 slides about these two projects. The first project is employees. It's a project that starts in 2021 from 2022. So the project was coordinated by the German Sport University of Cologne, and Universidade Europeu was part of the consortium together with another universities and with the EU athletes. This is like a European association of protection of athletes. And this project, when we end the project in 2022, we transformed to the second, or we developed the second project, that is Sopro's project, that started in 2023 and finished in 2025 with this consortium that you can see. And one interesting point is that we have here the International Labor Organization. So we bring one of the most important organizations about the protection or the rights of workers to this discussion, because even inside the ILO, they really still have to develop the idea of athletes as a worker, as people that lives or have part, or most of the part of their lives are to be athletes. So usually there's a kind of confusion of the topic of dual career and athletes' right, because dual career is the idea that I have like an athlete career and a second career that I'm preparing to develop after when I finish my athlete career. But the point is that usually the system don't understand that the athlete career is also a career, so it's a professional career. So just moving, to understand here some questions and what we discussed during the project. I will be very brief in this topic again. I will show the QR code to the main document. But what kind of questions we put in the beginning of the project? So the project was divided in 3 parts: understanding, evaluating, and improving. And the idea here was, in the first part, we researched 27 countries from European Union. So what we researched in the first part is how each country in the European Union deal with the topic of the employment relation in Olympic sports. And that is the part that I bring that is a little bit different from what can I call him Boki? Yeah, from Boki will present, is that we try to put some light not only in we took out professional basketball players, because usually, and football players, because usually they have contracts, they have all the rights, like in Portugal, the sport legislation specific about the topic protect. They have a contract, they have a union, they have all the money from commercial opportunities, everything is regulated. But especially for other sports, this is a topic that still have some gray parts that is not well regulated. So what is the effect of the legal and social political framework in each nation? So the first topic was what we call a fact report with this topic. So we researched the 27 countries in the European Union and try to understand the differences between the countries. Then we discuss it and we evaluate how the good governance of the system and how we can conceptualize the system. So the second part of the project brings us to this conceptual framework. So as you know, we are here at the university, and one of our role here is to bring a little bit of conceptual from the topic to the topic and to researchers, but not only research, people that are on the field also, to differentiate some concepts. So we elaborate this model with 6 parts. So each part: contract, income, commercial opportunities, occupational safety and health, social protecting, and participation and bargaining. Each topic we have some indications of good governance. So how each topic could be managed in each country, understanding that what is the difficulty from the sports system. The difficulty of the sports system is that we have different organizations in the system managing the same topic. So imagine, like for a judo athlete who is an Olympic athlete, he has sometimes contract relation with a club because he's practicing on the club. He have contract relation with the national federation because he's part of the national team. And when he go participate in the world champion, he's representing the country, not the club. And when he is on the Olympic Games, and when he got the right to compete in the Olympic Games, then he moved to the Olympic system, and in some kind of countries have some kind of contracts or have contract relation with the National Olympic Committee. So imagine that the same worker, in this case, the athlete, has 3 contracts with different rights, with different relations, with different incomes, with different responsibility. And what brings us to the topic was that depending of the case, we have some cases, I forget the name of the one, a very famous case of Austrian skier. She, do you remember the name? Okay. She had an accident during a competition in the European level, I think. So she lost the movements, and when she goes to the court to get like the rights, the protection for her life, each organization said that it was not his or was not the responsibility of each organization to deal with this, like pension, life pension, for instance, because there was not a clear distinction who was responsible for her work at this time. So this is a kind of discussion that we had in the project, and what we recommended at the end of the project. So the last part of the project was some recommendations, was of course some recommendations for governments, like to have or to mandate right contract and transparency between contracts, a minimum wage salary for athletes, because most of the athletes receive sometimes just like scholarship, and this scholarship sometimes is not doesn't have the same level of the minimum wage in the country. Some strength national legislation on the social protection, and this is a topic important because the second project, the SOPROS, just bring light to the social protection. So here we are talking about employment relation. So that the project was related to employment relation, and during this project, we saw that social protection was one of the weakest part that we found in the European level, each country. So we bring it to the second project. So we offered some recommendations to the National Olympic Committee and national federations, like some eligibility criteria for like a scholarship or grants for each athlete, and some recommendation, of course, for EU and international body. Sometimes it's more difficult to have like this kind of recommendation, because usually this group is too far from the athlete, because we know that athletes has relation with club, national federation, national Olympic Committee, but when we talk about the international federation, for instance, it's too far the distance between the athlete and this employment relation and the international federation, for instance. So then we go to the second project, that is SOPROS. So as I said, SOPROS was a project that was originated by the employees project, because we saw some difficulties on the topic of social protection. So we divided social protection in 10 topics: child and family benefits, maternity and paternity benefits, unemployment supports, employment injury and benefits, sickness benefits, health protection and insurance, old age benefits and pension, invalidity and disability benefits, survivor benefits, and minimum wage. So usually when we are workers and when we work for during all our lives, we want to be protected on this topic. So I want to work 30, 40 or more time in my life, but I want to have my old pension. If I have my like kid or daughter, I want to have paternity leave, paternity protection. If I felt in the stairs here, I want to be protected by the university, like as my organization that hired me. So I want to be protected to be like health benefits or to take care of me during this time. And we just bring some light to these topics. But the difference is that we didn't research the 27 states as we did in the first project because it's too much work. So we focused on 5 countries that were part of the project. So Portugal, Germany, France, Croatia, Poland, and that's it. So we research in these 5 countries. So our sample was a little bit smaller, but we had the same discussion or the same I can say the same data for some discussion. One of the main parts of the project is that we try to ask the athletes what they feel about social protection, if they are protected or not, or how is the feeling that they have. So usually they said that they have a kind of, so from 7 points, less than 3 points, or less than the medium part. No, medium. You are a statistic professor, right?
Yeah, medium.
Used to be the average, yeah. Less than the average said that they have sufficient knowledge to deal with the topic. So usually athletes don't have knowledge to discuss this topic because they are not aware of that. And only 8.5 of athletes consider social protection in their career decision. So when they decided to change clubs, change countries, or to any kind of decision that they have during their career, only 8.5 of these athletes consider social protection as something that we have in mind. This is completely different in the normal work. Usually we have sometimes, we think about our social protection when we decide to move from one organization to the other. So for the athletes, this is completely out of their mind. And more than 50% say they lack sufficient education. As I said, they don't have knowledge about the topic. And 88% of the athletes believe that the national federation should provide education. So the responsibility to give some education is from the national federations, even that they are sometimes more close to the clubs. From the stakeholder perspective, we got like some feedbacks. And for the stakeholder perspective, the most important protection that they used to offer is the health protection. Of course, usually insurance is a topic, and health insurance is a topic that organizations usually cares and offer to all athletes. But we can see like pensions and disability benefits, and there are topics that it's, of course, less than half of the organizations think that this is important. And we don't have here, for instance, maternity and paternity protection and leaves. And we know that this is a topic that usually for not only female athletes, but also male athletes that want to have their family and want to have their like family and life, personal life, they have this kind of feeling that they are not protected during this phase. And just to give the final, my final part here of the presentation that I promised, I said to Professor Carlos Barrac that I will try to be very concise and very objective here, is that some gaps that we found during the second part, the second project, the SOPROS project. So usually we have some legal ambiguity and athletes rarely recognized as workers. So many countries around Europe, they don't have specific legislation, or they didn't consider athletes as real works. They are a kind of special or different kind of workers. Usually we found a lot of performance-based access to benefits. This is very interesting in the sports system, that is like many countries, when you got a gold medal in the Olympics, if you got a gold medal in the Olympics, you have pension for all your life, you have prize money, you have protection. Sometimes you receive some kind of civil servant protection, or you become like a kind of public service. So you start to work for army or for like police forces. but only because your performance, not only because you were, so you got a medal, you got the prize. And we know that how hard it is to get like a medal. So imagine you have if you stay in the 4th place, you lose the opportunity of your life to have the pension for your life, for instance, because you just for 1 second you lost the 3rd place. Some fragmented governance between state and sport bodies. This is something very interesting, and I have recently talked with Ricardo. He's good to be here, and he said to me that the Portuguese Olympic Committee was having some meetings with the Social Security Department to discuss some topics about how to protect more or better sport athletes, and this is very interesting because this shows that how important it is to find or to mix or to bring this integration between sport and states. This is something very interesting. And here I think the topic that I bring our main guest here today, that is this idea of the collective bargaining and the union or the association. So I believe that this is an area, especially for our students here, that is really a future topic, is to have more managers, sport managers working in this kind of association to bring more projects to the area, or more concrete projects to the area. That's it. I will just leave here the QR code. I can, of course, to our student, I can offer after, but especially if we have somebody on the internet. So this is the QR code to the main report of the employees that brings the conceptual framework for athletes. And this is from SOPRO. And this is a very important QR code, because at the end of the SOPRO's project, we have a kind of space that organizations and individuals can sign a kind of assignment that so we have a final document, and you can sign this final document as an organization or as a person to show that this topic is important. So we have a list of persons that already signed the document at the webpage, and if you go to this QR code, you will find the specific spot that everybody can sign and to protect or to show this kind of protection. So, as I said, I don't know if I promised, I did what I promised, 15 minutes. I think maybe a little bit too much, but a little bit. But the idea here was just to present, of course, and to disseminate this both project. It's a 5 years project, and we have a lot of topic. But of course, that what brings us today here is to listen our main speaker, our guest speaker, and I want to ask Carlos here to introduce him and to give more more knowledge about the topic. So that's it. Thank you so much for your attention. And pode fazer a apresentação, Sr. Carlos.
É muito bom termos este espaço na universidade, e agradeço ao Ricardo e ao Nuno. O Ricardo só conheci hoje, acho eu. O Nuno já conheço há alguns anos, acho que conheço o Nuno, e ele tinha cabelos pretos, agora já tem cabelos brancos. É muito bom a gente ter este espaço em que vocês são os alunos, estão aqui reitores, estão aqui pessoas da Social Innovation, têm tido um trabalho convosco, toda a gente recorda. Aliás, já me tinham dito que estavas cá, porque chegaram cá acima todos animados, vimos lá embaixo com o Ricardo Carvalho. E é muito bom termos esta relação em que o Comitê Olímpico, o PDJ, a Universidade, os alunos, partilhamos coisas que nos ensinam a viver melhor e a fazer melhor. E, no fundo, o objetivo de tudo isto é que vocês tenham experiências que vos ajudem a ser melhores profissionais quando passarem para o campo de trabalho. Até esse que é o nosso desejo como professor. Já sabem que eu não gosto da palavra professor, sou o vosso colaborador, estou aqui para vos ajudar, e o objetivo é que vocês saiam daqui mais qualificados. Muito obrigado. E temos um special guest, Acho que a última vez que estive com ele foi na Malásia, se não estou erro. Was Malaysia, last time we were together. E que foi jogador da NBA durante 6 anos. Jogou na Europa durante mais do que isso. Participou em vários campeonatos do mundo já ao serviço da Eslovénia, de onde ele é natural. E há 8 anos, 8 years ago, that you created that.
Yeah, 2018.
8 anos atrás, ele que continua a gostar de basquetebol, apesar de já não jogar, não queria ser treinador e achou que era importante fazer algo pelos outros jogadores. Então começou a conversar com pessoas e construiu este cargo que ele tem atualmente, que é Managing Director da Associação de Jogadores da Liga, da Euroliga. Portanto, more than anything is a friend. So it was so good to have lunch with you today, pick you up at the airport and just hug you and tell that you have a little bit of stomach more than last time. So please welcome. Esqueci-me de fazer uma referência que temos aqui um atleta fabuloso internacional de basquetebol que hoje vive nos Açores, tem a sua família nos Açores, filho, e que hoje casualmente está aqui e eu não perdi a oportunidade de convidar também para estar connosco. Obrigado, Sérgio.
Só fechar em cima que surge aqui. Vamos lá. Eu disse para...
Há uma experiência em todo lado.
You want to use these?
Yeah, I'll use this. Once they...
Mas vou em cima ou fé?
Good, the big one.
Dar Açores.
5-minute break.
Não pagues a luz, pá.
Do outro lado.
Desliga mesmo. Não é luz. É o ar.
O ar
Está frio.
estava a ficar quente. Então se está frio, desliga, pá.
O pessoal de uma certa idade, isto já...
Isso fica. Por acaso está a ficar quente.
Eu sei. Fica um bocado de ligação outra vez.
Okay, he asked me to be here, but he doesn't need me for anything. He's a wonderful person. Was a very smart player, especially putting the ball on the basket, and usually never smile on the floor. So enjoy his smile because today he's smiling.
Smile a lot more off the court than on the court.
Not on the court.
Not so much.
Very serious all the time.
Yeah, but,
And don't ever put him in front of a particular fruit in Asia, which is durian, because he can show you the film of him kind of having a reaction to the smell.
That's how we met when I was in Malaysia. I think it was 2019. I was in Malaysia, and then one day he says, "You have to try this fruit." You know, he lived there, so he knew. I didn't know that he's a big joker. You know, you guys know him. So he's like, "You gotta try this fruit. It's amazing." You know, so he brings it, and just before he gives it to me, he says it's called smelly fruit. Right? It's called smelly fruit in
Durian.
English. Durian. Yeah, smell fruit.
The smell is so strong that you cannot bring it to hotels. You can't, and you cannot travel on an aeroplane with durian. So that's how smelly it is.
It's probably the worst thing I ever tried in my life.
But you can share the video.
Yeah, I can share it. You'll see. But that's how we met. So I appreciate that. Yeah, you probably mentioned I'm a former player. I played 20 years professionally. 6 out of those years, 20 years was in the NBA between 2002 and 2008 on a couple of different teams, and that's where I kind of realized or saw the power of the players. You know, that's where I kind of, you know, I was brought up in Slovenia and through ex-Yugoslavian regime, you know, of stay, you know, be quiet and work hard, which, you know, I think it helped a lot our generation of players. But I saw in the NBA the other aspect of players having the power, and players especially collectively stepping together and fighting for many things that my colleague here mentioned before. And then once I returned back to play in Europe, I realized the difference. You know, the contractual relationship. Every club had a different contract. You know, depending where you played, in some countries, maybe some clubs took care of one things, in the other countries, some clubs took care of the others. But there was no standard, even though I played in the top level in Europe, in EuroLeague. It was a big difference. And I played in Russia, I played in Turkey, I played in Germany.
If I remember, you have the
I
best,
played Italy, Spain. So
at the time, you have the best contract ever in Europe when you signed for the Russian team.
that was the reason why I left NBA. But it was not an easy decision, but yeah, a conscious one, and it was a different time, let's say in 2008. But you have one career, obviously, you have one to maximize it. So that was the year that many players came back to Europe in 2008, many Europeans. But I saw the differences between one country and the other, or one club and the other, even though we were all at the same level playing in the highest competition. So once I was nearing my retirement, I started to get more connected with the national players, national NBPA, so an NBA Players Association, who has been existing for decades, and they have been extremely strong in this movement, in collecting players together and fighting for their rights through the collective bargaining agreement. And that's how it got started. That was the beginning. I was talking to my generation of players, and we said, we're going to have to do a lot of work if we want to create something at the EuroLeague level, because it's been something that didn't exist before. So unlike in the NBA, when you come to the NBA, you have everything already as far as the collective bargaining. In Europe, it was nothing. And in some domestic leagues, player association existed, but once you went to the EuroLeague level, there was basically nothing, and it was very difficult or impossible to negotiate things with the league. And that's how the idea of Players Association started. And like we said, in 2018 we started. I actually spent the season 2017-18 traveling around. At that time, 16 teams. Now league has 20 teams, and just talking to players, just like we are here behind closed doors, getting opinions and seeing what matters to players. And one thing was very clear to me: the players really wanted to create a Players Association, but nobody knew how. And we needed a push, and we needed to, step together. And I was lucky to work with a really unique group of players. I don't know how much involved you're in basketball, but guys like Kyle Hines or Gigi Datome, Toko Shengelia, Marcelinho Huertas. That was older generation of players who really cared, who knew that the Players Association most likely is not going to benefit them, but it's going to benefit more the next generation of players. So to create something like this, you actually need people to sacrifice their time and their name in order to create something that most likely benefits the next generation of players. It's a very similar thing that happened in the 60s, 70s in the NBA. If you read the history of how Players Association started there, the Oscar Robertson and all these big legends of the NBA, they created things for the next generation. That's why we see now players benefiting from this in a huge way, decades later. So that's how we started in 2018. I was just explaining you earlier, Carlos, my initial idea was to create it because I was retired at that time from basketball, to create the association and then go into a different direction. I didn't have intention to stay and be fighting for players' rights, even though I wanted to create it, but then kind of do other things in my life, maybe not connected with sports. But year after year, I stayed in, and I got voted as a managing director for my first 4-year term. Got re-elected in 2022, and now my second term is going to expire in end of June. So I still haven't decided if I want to continue or not, but it's been a great journey to create something that didn't exist before. So that's a little bit of a introduction.
Can I say something to my students?
Of course.
Muitas vezes nós falamos exatamente desta nossa atitude. Não é estarmos à procura de um emprego, é sermos empreendedores. E este é o melhor legado que nós vos podemos dar, é vocês não pensarem, eu quero ser isto. Podem ser isto num sítio, mas podem ser isto onde vocês quiserem. Quer serem vocês a criar a vossa legacy, o vosso meio de sobrevivência, o vosso sonho. Não fiquem só à espera que alguém apareça a oferecer-vos um emprego. Portanto, o que ele está a contar, para ti, Carlos, que não falas bem inglês, é que foi ele que começou esta história de falar com os jogadores e perceber que os jogadores gostavam de criar uma associação de jogadores, um sindicato de jogadores, mas que ninguém sabia como fazer. E, portanto, foi ele que acabou por iniciar esse processo e acabou por, às tantas, ficar tão enrolado no processo, passou a ser o Manager Director e já vai no segundo termo de 4 anos.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't speak English, so...
Sure, no problem. Of course.
Sem nunca beneficiar dele, desta organização que criou como jogador.
Sim, e com essa noção também, que é assim, ele não fez isso para ele, porque ele já não era jogador, fez isto para os outros. E muitos dos jogadores que fizeram isso também já não fizeram para eles, estavam a acabar o seu tempo como atletas, fizeram para os outros. Portanto, legacy é isso, é o legado que a gente deixa na vida, transformar as coisas. Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Podes participar nas minhas aulas. Nas minhas aulas, toda a gente tem que falar. Só há aqui um ou outro que não gosta muito de falar, mas toda a gente pode falar e deve falar. Eu não gosto de ser professor, aliás, gosto de trocar de lugar com eles.
I was going to say, as I go through the presentation, if you have any questions or any comments, please do it. I always like to have a back and forth discussions more than a presentation. I was just in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, and I made a similar presentation. This is actually from there. The title is actually not for today. This was actually for a different conference.
As a matter of fact, very interesting subject that Luis presents here. So that was very, very, very good. Good job, man.
You make a good team.
Não costumo cumprimentar os árbitros, mas aqui.
So, but yeah, at any point you have any questions, please jump in. I was just in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago during the NBA All-Star break, and I made a presentation about ELPA and about European basketball, and it was about 50, 60 students, and it was a back and forth conversation, which I always enjoy a lot. So, I'm not sure how much you know with the background of European basketball, because I don't know how much time you spend watching or caring about it, but just a little bit about European basketball. So, EuroLeague is the elite competition, right? It has 20 clubs. It has a semi-closed structure. Some teams are in the league every year. Some teams move in and out. That pyramid system is kind of what is described here, right? You have EuroCup underneath, Basketball Champions League, which is run by FIBA. And then on the bottom are domestic leagues, including the Portuguese Basketball League, one of many.
Where ICC comes here, that international competition?
Well, these are just the leagues.
Just the leagues, okay.
So these are just the basketball leagues that exist in European basketball.
Okay.
This is not so much illegal. And actually, I don't know if you were in Geneva last week. Were you there with ILO last week?
No, I was not with my partners.
Okay, because our Secretary General Alex Engelhardt, who is the legal arm, I'm not the lawyer. He is. I'm the player in this group. He was there actually, so he was very familiar what you were explaining, because he updated me after the conference in Geneva last week.
The leaders of the program from German Sport University was.
They were probably together there.
The
same group of
the same group.
Athletes.
We are part of the consortium.
Good. So anyways, so the EuroLeague, right? The top competition in Europe. It has 20 teams currently in 25-26 season. I don't want to go too much into politics of it. Those older people in the room will remember in 2000 it became this division, right? FIBA, and then EuroLeague was created. So
é uma competição independente.
It's a private league, basically,
private league,
owned by 13 clubs. So 13 clubs are the owners of the league.
Owners of.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it started in 2000. Now we're in 25-26 season. 20 clubs are competing, and these big, let's call them the big clubs, are the shareholder clubs, are the main owners, are the owners of the league, and these are always constant in the league, and that's why it causes a little bit of controversy, because it's a kind of closed league, which is not really a model in sports in Europe, where other leagues have it always open and allow everybody to enter. But I will say that from my experience, it did help stabilize the top league, and it's much easier, at least from that standpoint, work with the clubs who are year after year in the league, because that's how you can grow the league. Otherwise, you have a lot of ups and downs. So from that standpoint, it's been easier or better for players because the conditions have improved. And I will explain a little bit more about this. Just a little bit more about EuroLeague. This was more in Los Angeles when I was explaining about EuroLeague to familiarize fans with what we have here. And basically, yeah. So this is it. I would say the structure of EuroLeague. Who holds the power in EuroLeague? And I think this is important to understand. On one hand, as I mentioned before, you have the shareholder clubs, right? They own the company that runs the EuroLeague. It's called EuroLeague Properties. On the second part of triangle, you have the league office, which is in Barcelona. Actually, your colleague Chus Bueno just got elected as the new CEO. He's a former NBA Europe
recently
vice president, a couple of weeks ago. So he's going to take a new direction, definitely, in more talks with the NBA to potentially merge with the NBA, which is I think could be very beneficial for European basketball. And recently, since 2018, basically the players became that third pillar of who really holds the power, right? It's very unique in that sense, because players have in EuroLeague have a meaningful role in the governance of the league, through ELPA, through the EuroLeague Players Association. So it was an uphill battle. It was a long fight from 2017, basically, when the idea started, to 2021 when we signed the first collective agreement. So it was a 3, maybe 4-year process of really daily work to finally get the collective agreement and to get recognized, not just by the league, not just by the shareholder clubs, but also by the World Players Association, which is the governing body of all associations in the world, under which also fall, whether it's NBPA, whether it's American Football Players Association, Baseball Players Association, FIFPro, which is big in soccer, and so on and so on. So ELPA became a partner, a part of this, and recognized worldwide as an association. And this was a huge success for players in EuroLeague, because it's not just a fictional association on the wall somewhere written, hey, it exists, but it actually is confirmed that we are at the table when we are talking about the main topics for athletes in the world, including last week in Geneva, where our Secretary General was present and gave his input. So, yeah, a little bit more about ELPA, or why it really got created. So historically, there was no players' union inside of EuroLeague. EuroLeague started in 2000, so for the first 18 years, players had no collective voice. Each club had their own type of contract. Players had no say in whether it's working conditions, whether it's contractual related things, whether it's minimum salary, whether it's the medical standards that the clubs have to offer. It was actually up to the club and up to each player or agent to negotiate it. And you can imagine the differences were huge. You were a bigger player, you made more money, your standards were here. You were a smaller or younger player, you would start here. And inside the same locker room, the differences were huge, right? And players were excluded from any kind of decision-making process. So basically, players had no say. When the league was deciding its things, none of the players were included in the conversation. None of the players were even updated. This was a non-existing thing. As I mentioned before, players had only individual contracts. And this kind of imbalance created the EuroLeague Players Association. Like I said, my generation of players, who was kind of on the way out, realized that and said, hey, let's use last couple of years of our career to do something good for the players. And the names I mentioned before from the guys are actually the ones that pushed and convinced other players that it's worth doing this. I will say this from my experience. It's not always easy and it's not always simple. And some of these guys, unfortunately, created a lot of tension inside their club. Some of them maybe don't have the great relation anymore with the club that they played because of that. But there's a greater good that you're thinking about when you're creating association, and that step is necessary, because the employer is not always going to open the door and say, sure, change the rules or elevate the standards and we'll pay for it. It doesn't work like this. That's fairy tale. So a lot of times players have to step up in order to achieve something like this. And I was happy enough to work with some of those guys who were willing to do that in EuroLeague, which is, for the first time in history of basketball in Europe, to say that at the international level, players did that. If you think all the way back to 70s, 80s, 90s, great basketball played, but never any kind of collective representation, right? So, main reasons why ELPA was created and what ELPA has achieved. So as I mentioned before, completely different work of standards where you played. Late or unpaid salaries, contract terminations without cause. Coach or a club was not happy with the player, they find a reason to try to terminate the contract. Sure, you could go to the BAT court and try to get your right there, but it was a very common theme that players would get fined or sanctioned, or even contractual termination came into play if the club was not happy with how player performed, right? No standard injury protections, unregulated sanctions. There are many stories where a team underperformed, lost some games, and the coach would come in the locker room, the club would just decide and say, hey, 20% off your salary. Why? Because I say so. Boom, you played poorly. That was a common theme. I experienced it as a player. It happened to me. It was very normal. And our generation of players previously, we accepted it to some point. It was like part of how the basketball was used to be, even at the highest level. No minimum rest or practice rules, so it was really up to the club to decide when you start training camp, how much you practice, when do you travel, when do you go to bed, when do you wake up. You lose a game, 8 a.m. practice next morning. It was a very common thing. And of course, the ongoing dispute between EuroLeague and FIBA, which is still unresolved fully with the schedule, right? You played for your club, but because the dates were similar to when the FIBA played its national team games, sometimes you could not play for national team, and that really frustrated players. So some of the things that we've achieved in these years, improved working conditions. I can go in more detail if you guys want on what was achieved there. Established minimum standards for players, guaranteed minimum salary standards, injury protections, payment guarantees, arbitration that is being created inside EuroLeague that actually is a faster, quicker, cheaper arbitration than going to a local court or going to BAT, and player representation in EuroLeague committees. The most important thing that kind of puts everything together, and it's going to be maybe more similar to you, because you understand the legal aspect, is the standard player contract, which means that every player in EuroLeague now has to sign the same type of contract, which already includes all these minimum guarantees or minimum standards, no matter which club you play out of 20, right? So you have certain standards guaranteed. And as part of that is that we signed the collective agreement. It's actually been we negotiated the first pan-European collective agreement in any sport, not just in basketball, whether it's handball, soccer, volleyball, whatever it is. So we've been the first that actually have done the collective agreement that encompasses all 9, 10, 11 countries, depending on how many teams play in the competition. So again, the framework agreement, as we call it, the EuroLeague framework agreement, the EFA, it's a document very similar to what in the USA they call CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. It's basically a contract between the union, in this case between players, the EuroLeague players, and the league, which includes all these things that I mentioned, all these standards, right? And we can explain a little bit about what it is and what is not. I think this is a good to understand for people here who are interested in creating union, like we discussed on the local level. So the purpose of the EFA was to standardize players' working condition across all the clubs of the league, to reduce legal disputes and to stabilize the league operations. Actually, what we've seen is by doing that the league has started to grow tremendously in fan interest, in better product on the court, better recognition of players, because it became highly professional compared to before.
Capability.
Exactly. So what EFA governs is contract structure and guarantees, salary payment timelines, medical insurance standards, disciplinary procedures, dispute resolution. A lot of details in all of these. I'm happy to go into it either now or later during the break. What it's not is the revenue sharing system as they have in the NBA. It's not a salary cap, even though the league has a financial fair play system in place. And of course, we don't have a free agency system like in the NBA. There's no draft, there's no trades and things like that. That was a little bit of a comparison from that session I had in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago. So that's a little bit about ELPA. That's what we do. That's who we are. That's why we exist. And I'm happy to discuss any of the topics that I mentioned into more detail.
So today you spend a lot of time on the phone.
Yeah.
I was very insulted because I was trying to talk to you and you were on the phone. What is your big issue right now?
Well, the biggest issue, especially last week, is what happened in the Middle East, and the fact that we have one team from Dubai that joined EuroLeague this season, and we have two teams from Israel, Hapoel and Maccabi. So we had to deal with making sure that players get relocated, that they get out of Israel and out of the Emirates. It was a little bit easy in case of the clubs because the players were already with the clubs, so we're just making sure that everything goes smoothly, even though it was not easy. In case of there's some crazy stories on how teams had to travel with a bus to different country to get out of different airports. But there was an issue with players who were actually just during this time, because there's a short break in the season now, who were vacationing in Dubai. And once their flights got canceled, we started receiving calls from the players. How do I get out? Because I saw the videos. I see bombs basically getting intercepted in the air. So players were legitimately scared on how to get out. So we try to connect with different companies to get them out via charter, or have them travel to Saudi Arabia or to Oman. At the end, we connected with Dubai Basketball Club, who was on the ground still, and we were able to attach 26 of those players and families, so 26 persons, to go together with Dubai to leave, actually to come to Slovenia, to my country, to Ljubljana, and from there they flew home. So this was a big task last week, and a lot of sleepless nights, because it was pretty scary for some of the players, to be honest.
Safety first.
Yeah, well, safety and well-being, right? This is the priority for everything, and but there's connection to that. For example, games in Israel, we have now players who are having issues with clubs potentially fining them, because some of them didn't travel to Israel because they didn't feel safe just prior to the start of the war. So our legal team is now dealing with that part. And we have this arbitration in the EuroLeague now, where we're most likely going to have to go that route in order to protect players, because the clubs are trying to, obviously, in our view, unreasonably fine or sanction players, and we're there to protect them in this case. So that's been the latest one that we're dealing with, including today.
I respect that.
Yeah.
Just asking.
Yeah.
Questions?
I don't want to be the first one, but I have many questions. Yes. One of my questions is, especially you deal with clubs in different countries, and this is, I think, for the European context, different from the American. The American, they usually have, of course, they are independent state, but they are still a country, and here the difficulty is.
We have one team in Canada.
Yeah, that's the point.
Which make a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Because
that's right.
Just if you have an idea, every time a team goes there to play, there's a tax issue, because they are going outside of the country. Yeah, they go to a country, and there's like tax issues. I know that because when we have the All-Star game there in 2016, I believe, there was a lot of issues, even with all the employees of NBA. At the time, I was working for NBA, and there was like a lot of issues, because we were actually working there. So as we were working there, there was issue with taxes. So that was the laws are
not easy to navigate. But I think I know where he's going.
How you can manage like a single contract for countries dealing with different like legal context, and did you think that you have like a contract that at least offer minimum standard for each country, that we know that the different realities, like minimum wage?
I'll start here. Minimum wage was negotiated with the league, so we kind of knew what players are making, what the average salary is, and we try to negotiate a salary or minimum salary that would make sense for clubs and players. And why do I say that? Because we didn't want to push for a minimum salary being too high, because then we would have younger players who would not be able to sign these contracts because they don't have a financial value yet for the club. So there had to be a little bit of a mitigation there. And I think now that the league has financially grown in the next collective bargaining agreement, which actually starts next week, to be honest, because it expires in the summer, the collective agreement, and we have one more year of prolongation possible. We'll definitely push for a higher minimum salary, but that's been, it's in this of every collective agreement, the minimum salary is a standard, right? This is a basic thing that you have to negotiate. But I think we came up with a model that actually makes sense, and it's like a progressive salary. The longer you stay in the league, the higher your minimum salary can be. But in terms of different countries, what we've done is that we have negotiated minimum standards that cover, like I mentioned before, many different topics. However, we have included also language in the collective agreement that if at a domestic league level, there is in a domestic league, if there's a players association, for example, whether it's in France or whether it's in Spain, if they have a better condition for the player, that always prevails. So we've achieved minimum standards across EuroLeague, across all EuroLeague countries, which I will say we had only one case where a domestic league came into play, and that was just recently in France, because what we have in EuroLeague is that we have a very aggressive system for late payment. If 15 days teams are late, players can report to us late payment. We report it to the league, and the league will basically freeze clubs' ability to register any new player or coach until those players get paid. However, because we haven't negotiated such an aggressive system for late payment, on the other side, the league insisted that to terminate the contract, that time has to be longer. So we've agreed on 60 days, which is a very long for basketball. But our system for getting the payments to players was working great. What we have seen a situation this season with Monaco, who was really late in salaries because of financial issues, is that players were thinking to start terminating their contracts after 35, 40 days, so before 60. And because French League or French Players Association has 30 days in their collective agreement, that prevails. So players could terminate contracts after 30 days, if you understand. So whatever on domestic league level, there's a rule that is better than what we negotiated, that automatically prevails, always in the favor of the player. So this is how we navigated these differences. Okay.
The fact that the league is owned by the teams also helped kind of a compromise on that legal side.
In a way, but it's still an independent office in the sense that offices in Barcelona and teams are not really involved in day-to-day things. They hire the staff. There is a staff of, I think, 50 or 60 people in the offices in Barcelona, including Chus Bueno and the leadership. So they are given the ability to negotiate these things and to run the league. And sometimes clubs are not happy with how they negotiate because we push for players' rights. And when problems happen, the clubs are like, but you negotiated badly talking to them, which is benefit for us, which is good for us because every time we can get something for players, it's a win. But yeah, it was not easy at the beginning, but I will say this, that it's also true that EuroLeague came to a point back in 2018 where it, I think, understood that in order for the league to grow, they needed to be challenged. And that's why they have, let's call it, allowed union to get created, right? But, once we started with players, first it was 30 players, it was 40 players, it was not easy. I always remember when we would go to the offices of EuroLeague and they said, how many players do you represent? Because each player has to physically sign the agreement that he becomes a member of the association. And the beginning wasn't easy because we had 30, 40% out of 300 players, or back then it was maybe a little bit less because it was less teams, but it was very difficult because the league would always tell us, it's great what you're doing, pat on the back, but come back when you have a bigger number of players. And it was challenging at the beginning because we couldn't deliver a lot of things to players without a collective agreement. And we couldn't get collective agreement without a bigger number of players. So it was kind of like this circle. But that's why I said earlier, the initiative by players themselves helped that, because once the number grew to 50 and 60%, which was super majority, and we negotiated the first collective agreement. And during the COVID time, we arranged for players that they received 80% of salary for only 60% of games played. This was an eye-opener for players. And they said, well, collectively you can do that? And we said, well, yeah, check your bank account. It is possible. And that's when the membership skyrocketed, and now we are basically at 100%. So every player that comes into the league automatically signs to become a member because it makes all the sense in the world. So these are the things that we do for players contractually, let's say, through the EFA. The other aspect is also the player programs that we have, which I'm happy to talk about, because there's some external things that we offer for players as well that are there for them, and a lot of them are taking advantage of that. Especially two programs that we are really focused on. One is the second career. So we have basically hired, and is now part of our staff, a second career coach, who is extremely highly regarded. She worked with many different executives in top level companies when they were switching careers. So we said we need to get somebody because we believe our athletes are some of the hardest working, with greatest habits and super smart people. We need to have an expert on our side that's going to be able to help players to switch from playing to after career, which I'm one of them, I'll tell you, is one of the most difficult things you can do in life. Because it's when you're feeling the best around 35, when you just think you understand the world, basketball stops, right? Or other sport. So we've done that, and we are huge on second career, and we have a lot of players who go through their program. It's an individual program, which helps players either to recognize what's their passion, what's their what do they care about. We have only in the last 2 years 13 players who received master's degree through our program while they play in EuroLeague, which didn't exist before. We have players who are getting certification to get educated, whether it's real estate, whether it's finance, whether it's whatever their passion is. and or the players who want to go into coaching. So we work together with Coaches Association to give players placement in their academy to start going that route. So that's one part. And the second part is mental well-being. Similarly to Second Career, we are working with sports psychology professional who is highly regarded and one of the best in Spain. People always tell me who it is and what does she do and so on and so on. She's a former player, but I always say the best is go watch Ricky Rubio's press conference when he came back after his issues off the court and signed the contract in FC Barcelona 2 years ago. And he brought her with him onto the press conference and said, "That's the person that helped me come back. I don't think there's a better way to recognize what we do and what she does and helping players to go through these problems and issues." So these are two areas that we externally, let's say, focus on and help players. But we have bigger goals and we have a lot more to do, including, as you know, very difficult in international sports is a pension for players. And that's something that is going to be our next big task, to secure that for players.
And do you think that all these parallel aspects, like the programs or the contracts and all that, helps the product to have more value?
I mean, in terms of player association, definitely, because you have to show players as an association what you can do. Because a lot of times you're going to have players who are going to say, "Hey, I'm collecting my salary, I'm playing well, I don't have any issues." But
my question is more on the other side. Is the EuroLeague product become a better product because all that?
Without any kind of question, 100%. 100%, we have seen increase in player production. We have seen better product on the court. We have seen commercially the league has grown. We see more synergy between the league and the players. At the end,
and you see
strong player representation and a healthy relation with the league can only be beneficial. Because I always say when I talk to the league and to the clubs in our meetings, I repeat it every single time. I say it is our goal from the Player Association that the league grows. When we have an issue with the league, I'm not doing that in order to punch down on the league or to punch down on the clubs. This is not the point. The point is to try to find a solution so that the league can grow. Because who benefits at the end if the league is better, more professional, has more income? The player. With a strong collective agreement, the player is going to directly benefit. And we've seen that since 2018 until now, exponentially, for example, the player salaries have gone up. In 1 year, from last year to this year, the club's revenues have, for example, increased. And I'm saying just recently because it really started the financial fair play with more transparency just recently. And we can see the trend of league growing. This is directly benefiting the player because player salary is directly connected to the revenues of the teams.
The results.
Exactly. So that's how we see it, and that's our approach. Like I said before, it's not always pretty. Actually, I had today a very uncomfortable conversation with one of the GMs of one of the clubs regarding the situation in Israel where players didn't travel and how they want to solve this and how we don't agree. These conversations are not pleasant, but it's a part of the job, and players appreciate it. And a lot of times, I wanted to say this before, is players will not really experience it until the issue happens. When the issue happens and you're there to help the players, that's when they realize the big value. That's when they realize. One thing I didn't mention when I said medical stuff is we also negotiated the second medical opinion, which is every player's right. So players, when they get injured, they can come to us and they say for any kind of type of injury they have, it's their right to have it rechecked through ELPA. We have a doctor in Barcelona who has a wide network of doctors throughout Europe. Depending on the type of injury, the player's right is to get checked. Clubs must allow him to go to see the doctor in person if that's needed. We'll cover expenses for player to fly to the hotel, to the flight, the hotel, and everything to see the doctor. And in case the diagnosis is different than club's doctor, ELPA jumps in, and we had cases where we mediate to find the best solution for the player, not for the club, for the player. And the second thing medically is we are one of the first leagues and the only league currently in Europe that has a concussion protocol in place. So every time the players before every season, when they sign a contract, they have to pass it's called SCAT-6 test, where they have to basically it's like a memory test. You have to memorize things and you have to answer questions. And this is mandatory for every player to be registered in the league. Without this test, you cannot step on the EuroLeague court. So when you get hit during the season in the head, you have to pass that test again. Until you pass that test, which means that you are cognitive, that your head functions, you cannot get back on the court. So it's things that protects players that are basically sound basic, but we've seen example just in that case a couple of years ago before we had the concussion protocol in place where players would get hit in the head. The trainer, the physiotherapist would come on the court, would pick the player up, which is I'm not a doctor, but the worst thing you can do. We had players who called us 2 days after the game and they said, I watched the video of the game and I know I got out of the game, but I don't remember at what point the coach put me back in because they were clearly concussed. So that kind of woke us up and we connected with NBPA, see what they're doing. And now we have actually a copy-paste system in EuroLeague on the concussion protocol, which is actually nothing overly scientific. It's just a matter of pushing it through and every doctor can do that. It's not a super difficult test. So these are things that are important. And yeah, I understand. I've been a player. A lot of times you are in the locker room and players will say, I don't need this. You know, what is this? It's whatever. When they have an issue and they call and you fix it, they change the mind very, very quickly on the role of the association. And some of the players actually who at the beginning were not interested became our biggest supporters because of what they experienced, whether it's contractually or medically or legally and so on. You have to basically prove yourself with actions. That's what it is. Yeah.
Two small questions.
Yeah, sure.
One, when an athlete goes to the EuroLeague, he signs. He's a member of the Athletes Association. When he moves out for a different club, does he used to be part of the player association or
good question. So we do have a status for such players called associated members, so they can continue to use some of our things free of charge. For example, like I mentioned before, educational second career sessions or things like that. They can be. We have online seminars during the year, so we give out a service to players, trying to find out what their interest is. For example, real estate. We'll hire a person, do an online session during the season when some players are in Lithuania, other in Germany. We'll meet online. We're going to have like a 2-3 hour session about a certain topic. So things like that, the other players can use, or they can use our legal help, legal advice, even though they're not part of the league anymore.
Different type of member.
Yeah. But unfortunately, if they're playing in a different league, they don't fall under the collective agreement. You know. However, I kind of went through it quickly. You maybe saw that EuroLeague has the second league called EuroCup. EuroCup players can also use our salary recovery system and second medical opinion. So we also offer that to EuroLeague players because it's under the same umbrella, even though they don't have a collective agreement. Okay. So that's
second question. You mentioned that you have 13 clubs permanent and 7 new ones. And do the new clubs they are easy to work with? Because I assume that if you have fixed clubs, you have a relation, like a long-term relation. With the new club coming in, coming out, is it easy to?
It can happen that they won't fully understand things. This is something that I think, and I told this many times to the league. The league should do a better job educating the leadership or the management of the clubs that come in, because a lot of times we see that they are not fully familiar with the collective agreement, which is together with SPC about 90-page agreement. Yeah. I mean, you have to study it. You have to have your legal team go through it and understand what you are getting into.
Like every team on NBA, they have specialists.
Exactly.
The fiscal, the taxation, the legal.
Of course, but they're always the same.
They're always the same.
Yeah.
So in terms of EuroLeague, it does happen. Like we have situations where season will start in October and in early December something will happen, and we'll call up the club and say, "Hey, you're not following these and these rules." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Look at the page 36 of the collective agreement." They call me back. "Oh, I'm sorry. How do we fix this?" I said, "Well, now it's maybe too late, depending on the problem." But but they in general they're pretty good. In general, there's sometimes issues, but in general, the new clubs that come in, they are getting better and better.
You have to
understand because now it's been in place for many years, right? So the collective agreements has been in place since 2021. Now it's already the 5th year. They understand. Hey, this is basically the Bible. of the competition, and we need to know it. So it's less and less problems every year, to be honest.
Now, for example, the new team from Dubai, they have to adapt quickly.
Oh, they were actually one of the best, to be honest.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, they adapted really quickly, and I have to say that they were very professional when it comes to this. So I expected we will have more issues with them, but it was not a big problem, to be honest. They were very professional. So I think they prepared well. Yeah.
Yeah, two questions. The first one, how did you finance the association in the early days and right now? And the second one will be related to what is preventing the salary cap.
That's a good. I love the second question. The salary cap is my passion. So, to be completely honest, I was just telling you earlier.
Sorry, Ed, you had not been completely honest.
No, but
now?
No, because this one is very personal. That's why I say to be completely honest. Because the season 2017, 2018, I retired before that season, and I had some ideas what I want to do, but I said, hey, I've been in locker room every day of my life almost. So what I've done in that season is by myself, I traveled to visit all 16 teams. So to say long story short, at the beginning, we didn't have financing. It was basically player sacrifice, to be honest. To be a little bit more honest, we made agreement with some of the legal offices, please help us out and believe in our project, and we'll be able to compensate later. And luckily, I found people who were willing to really work pro bono pretty much at the beginning to establish some of those things early on. But our main or our only way of financing is membership fees. We have yearly membership fees for players. They're public. They're on our webpage. Basically, for younger players, it's free of charge. But then we charge depending on the amount of player salary from 1,000 to 3,000 euros per year. Now you will say, "Wow, that's a huge amount of money." At the end, on average, that is less than 0.3% of average player salary in EuroLeague. And if you think that they are paying agents 10% of their salary and they're paying the association 0.3, and the things that are listed here, when we tell the players who are complaining what we do, they say, you should take more. You should charge more. So that's where we are. And like I said, we have, full membership, around 290 players in the league who are our members. So we've expanded. We started very small with basically 3 persons at the beginning, and that was mostly pro bono work, to now having 9 people employed as part of ELPA and traveling across Europe, visiting all the teams, doing events, negotiating collective agreements, and still paying a lot of legal fees, to be honest, because legal work is not cheap. So as you know, so that's what we do. Yeah.
To be honest now.
Sure. Salary cap.
Oh, salary cap. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. So, again, I'm not a lawyer, even though our legal team always argues that I should get an honorary legal degree, because I love to be involved in all legal disputes that we have. I'm just like a fly on the wall and I listen. So many legal battles that we have, it's incredible, and I really have a passion for it. But it is a legal question, mostly on the European level. Salary cap as such is not permitted, right? Workers' salary is not allowed to be capped. What EuroLeague has done is that they have created a system called financial fair play, which kind of resembles a soft cap. I don't know if you know about it. They started recently. We participated in that creation in order to make sure that player salaries are not limited individually. Players can still sign whatever agreement they want, but clubs that are overspending at a certain limit, they are subject to a tax they have to pay to the league, which then gets distributed back to the clubs directly, so league doesn't retain it, which also means that the clubs or the players from the lower bowl or less spenders are actually benefiting from this as well. So the money stays in the system. For now, we haven't seen a legal challenge going against it, because we've seen that actually player salaries continue to increase even with that system. But if that system becomes more sophisticated and continues to grow, we'll have to probably participate in a more aggressive way. But right now, the EuroLeague financial fair play is not part of our collective agreement. We've intentionally left it out because we want to see if it gets legally challenged. It's league's problem. It's not our problem. And for now, it's been functioning well, and we'll see how it grows. We'll see how it grows, and if it helps stabilize the league. Because one thing that we don't want is what has happened historically in EuroLeague or in European basketball is clubs, because of financial issues, clubs falling off and disappearing. Because if you lose a club in EuroLeague, which is the best competition, that has on average this year 22 million of revenues and has a budget of majority of these revenues go to player salaries. If you lose one of these clubs because of the financial issue, that means that potentially between 12 and 15 players are going to lose ability to earn that money. So we prefer to have a stable system where 20 teams, or maybe next season even 22 or 24, the league might expand. That means more jobs, more positions, and more opportunities for players to earn money. So we agree to a certain financial fair play in order to stabilize the league. That's the important thing. We don't want to see clubs falling off because of financial problems, which has happened in European basketball a lot in the last 2 decades. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I was curious about more the transition, that second career you spoke. How many of those 293 players they prevent that? They engage into educational matters. What is the percentage?
Yeah, I will say that I will tell you the percentage. I would not count 293 players just because there is probably about 30 players or so who are young players in the team who are also in this group. So the number is actually less. The number is more about 250, 60 professionals, let's say, because every team has young players on the team who are not part of the team and who are realistically not thinking about second career because they still haven't started the first one. So, but those
professionals,
the professionals we have between 10 to 15% of players are actively engaged every year. So we have currently about 30 or 40 players who are in the program, which I think is a great number.
In your formation program?
Yes, in our program.
Okay.
It's an individual program. So it's individual sessions, one-on-one online with a professional of preparing players for the second career, whether that is after the playing career or in parallel to playing career, because players have businesses also, not all of them, but some of them are smart enough to say, hey, even though I'm 27, 28, it doesn't mean I have to be only basketball players. I've earned some money. I want to get educated on what I can do with this money. I have a passion for restaurant business or whatever it is. But we've told players many times, like, you have to get educated in this area. Don't just give that money to somebody else to manage it. Be involved, right?
Do you have evidence that gives them stability as a professional player to perform?
We see it as evidence because we have people who are in our program now doing second career already successfully. So players who have went through our program, who didn't know what they want to do in life now, whether it's financial, we have a couple of players who are doing financial advising, who that was their passion, they got educated in that part. One of the players is now the general manager of Real Madrid basketball, who didn't know what he wants to do 2 years ago, Chacho Rodriguez. They went through our program and so on and so on. So it's great to see these guys who understood what their passion is, got certification, whether it's in business or sports business or whatever, and then follow their passion. So those are the results we like to see. You know,
even to perform is a second ground that it's building. Right?
Yeah.
The educational part.
We had a funny session. It was actually last season, and our second career coach was traveling with me to go visit teams, and we were presenting this program. And we had a player in. It doesn't matter the name, but it was actually in Bayern Munich last season, and we're presenting the second career. And the guy goes, and Bea is her name, Beatriz. She was asking, hey, what do you want to do apart from basketball? And one guy was like sitting in the back. He was kind of funny. He was like, I want to be a DJ. He's like, I want to DJ, you know. And Bea, she turned it. She made it serious. She was like, what do you know about music industry? Like, you know, he genuinely liked music. She's like, what do you know? Like, how do you connect with people? Like, how do you intend to build your brand as in music? And it actually opened the player's eyes, right? He signed up for the second career, started to get educated. The second example I give to players is we had a player in Valencia who said, raised his hand and he said, I don't agree with doing second career during my current career. It takes away the focus from my life. Genuine comment, I think. But the comment or the counter argument I heard from my colleague was, but don't you think that if you start focusing on life after basketball and know that this is taken care of, you don't think you will perform better today?
That's my question. That was my question.
And he signed up to the second career program. So these are the things that, to show you what proof I have, I cannot give you stats, but I can give you examples of players that have done it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure. No, please.
Well, amazing work
congratulations on what you built and what you did. It's completely amazing. Just to give you a little bit of reference point, we used to have a professional league in Portugal up till 2008, I think, and there was a thought about building a players association, and there's actually an association that has been almost without much relevance for the last 25 years or something. In 2022, a couple of friends and me tried to relive it, and we had denied by the Portuguese Basketball Federation because they didn't see the importance in it. Having your knowledge and having your experience, and now it's an amateur league, it's not a professional league. How do you think we could find a way to make it work a little bit?
I obviously don't know the challenges you have or the league has at this level, but I will tell you this, that I can only speak from my experience. And this was kind of our approach to getting foot through the door with EuroLeague. Was we looked at it from the angle, not how we can take away from the league, from the clubs, in terms of not to present it as a problem to the league, or not to present it as something that we want to take away something financially because we're raising the standards, but how can we actually bring something to the league? And for us, at least in our case, the big thing was, how can we help the clubs commercially? Because your basketball is very undeveloped commercially in Europe, and it's still struggling a lot about this. It's improved, but it's still not where it is. What we've done is we've counter-proposed some things that didn't exist before. More specifically, appearances with sponsors for the clubs that players were willing to do. Put them in the agreement, oblige players to do these things, even players who might be lazy and don't want to do it. And this is where the club started to listen and say, hey, that makes sense. I always have a problem with telling players to come to my appearance, to be with a sponsor, or to be with the fans or something like this. And what we've done is we've created a culture where it's more common now that players are more engaged with sponsors of the clubs, with partners of the clubs, with fan bases. That's kind of connected to what I said, that you grow the pie, right? That's one example of, don't bring it as a, we have an association. Don't bring it to the league as we're creating a problem for you. Try to come up with solutions on what you can bring to the table to grow the game, to grow the league. Because at the end, it helps everybody. This was always, I mentioned this before, it was always our message is, we're here to contribute to the growth of the league. It's not our way to, because too many times clubs will see it only as you're trying to take away, and because you're raising the standards and you want higher salaries and you want this, it costs me. What we are doing is actively participating and telling them, no, it's not this. It's about participating in the growth of the league, in the growing of the cake, where everybody's going to have more. So that would be the approach. Again, I don't know the issues you have on the Portuguese level, but trying to recognize what players can do for the league to grow. Once they recognize you as a partner, things become easier and not as an adversary. This is the approach that we had.
We will have more time to talk, not just with our distinguished guest as him. One last question for our vice rector.
Very quickly. I want to go back to the second program that you mentioned. How did you did the formation how did you present to the players? Did you have any kind of protocol with universities or?
Very good question. Yeah. So what we've done is at the beginning we started as I mentioned before, the online sessions. Just kind of starting to gather players' interest about it. We had database of players' information because we visit them, we talk to them, so we had their information, emails, phone numbers, and so on. So we said, hey, February 5th, we'll talk about second career. And out of 250 players, maybe 15, 20, 25 signed up to the first session. And you know how it is. It spreads like virus. If you're bringing something positive, then in the locker room, the next day, the player will say, hey, I spoke to Elpa and we talked about second career. And the next time we did it, it was a little bit more. You try to put these ideas in the players' heads, and that's how it grows. And once we've seen the interest to grow, we said to our, at that time, she was not part of Elpa, the second career coach. We said, hey, would it be okay if we start sending you players one by one and you work with them, right? Elpa will pay for the sessions. Can you do that? Soon it went from 10 players to 15 players to 20, and it started costing us a lot of money because so many players. Well, we said, hey, why don't we hire her? It's actually going to be cheaper for us. And she became part of our staff because of the interest of the players. And with that, we said, hey, let's expand the program. So we started working with universities. We work with Iste University in Barcelona. We work with Johan Cruyff Institute in Barcelona, which offers different courses, different degrees. And through those collaboration with universities, players are actually getting educated while they play. I said we had 13 players who got master's degree in the last 2 seasons while they played in EuroLeague. Of course, it's a long distance learning and it's adapted to player schedule. You have to find the right partner, but it is possible. And that's how we basically went from planting a seed to growing it into something bigger.
Today, the online programs also probably make a huge impact on that.
Definitely, definitely.
It's the easiest way.
But it's also an investment for players, right? We tell the players, I mean, they're costly, and players have to pay for that education. We're not a charity in the sense that we're going to pay, because we also want to oblige players. If you want to do something like this, like take ownership in it. And what we've seen also is that every time the players have to financially participate in something, they're going to care much more than just getting things for free. I think it's a natural behavior. If you get something for free, it's whatever. But if you're paying for it, you're going to pay close attention. You're going to be much more involved. So, we're helping players with recognizing what they want. We help them find the right path, the right educational partner, university or program. And at that point,
he's a vice director, so the next one is going to be here for sure.
We're always.
I know he was already thinking about that.
Yeah. So that's what we do. That's a part of it. And
my relation with this group of students is amazing. Sometimes we drink coffee together. Sometimes we travel to Madrid, and sometimes I offer them dinner. So today I have special dinner for everyone. Thank you for the university. So we need to step up and eat some food now.
Let's go.
We have a break.
Let's go for a break.
Workshop.
Really nice.